إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. And we have sent down the Quran in the Arabic language so that we may take heed, so that you may understand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the greatness of the Quran in these opening verses. Moving on to the actual story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ, that we have related to you the beautiful story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. Ahsan al-Qasas refers to the most beautiful of stories. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed the story of Yusuf alayhi salam to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and refers to this story as the most beautifulest of stories. What's the reason? The scholars, they mention that this surah, or this story in particular, is mentioned Ahsan al-Qasas, that if one was to practice upon this surah, then he will have the qualities of ihsan and the qualities of human being within them. If you have to look at the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and we'll go into it, you will see the beautiful character of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Also, you will see the spiritual beauty of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So if one has to ponder over this entire story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, you can only come to a realization that this is one of the most beautifulest of stories which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in the Quran. Anyway, Allah mentions the incident that happened and was the reason. Allah mentions, إِذْ قَالَ يُوسُفُ لِأَبِيهِ يَا أَبَتِ إِنِّي رَأَيْتُ أَحَدَ عَشَرَ كَوْكَبًا وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ رَأَيْتُهُمْ لِي سَاجِدِينَ. That Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam, once he said, "Oh my beloved father." And it's a lesson for all the youngsters here. When you interact with your father or with your mother, then you call them by their beloved name. You say, "Oh my beloved father, oh my beloved mother." You don't take their first name and you say, "Oh Ahmad," or you say, "Oh Maryam," if your mother's name is Maryam. You don't take their first name. You say, "Oh my beloved father," or "Oh my beloved mother." That is the way that you interact with your parents. So this is the first lesson that you can learn from this surah. How Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam, he went to his father and he spoke to his father in that manner. And he said, "Ya Abba, inni ra'aytu ahad." Oh my beloved father, I have seen 11 stars. And I have seen the sun and the moon, they are all prostrating to me. Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam, he says, قَالَ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تَقْصُصْ رُؤْيَاكَ. Oh my beloved son. And this is a lesson for the fathers as well. Just as it's important for the sons or for the daughters, it is also important for the fathers and the mothers as well. That when you respond and you react to your child or you reply to your child, how do you reply? You don't say, "Oh, oi," or you call him indecent names. You call him, he's a bit, mashallah, and you call him by an indecent way of calling a human being. You say, "Oh my beloved son." You say, "Oh my beloved daughter." That is the way that you reply, and that is the way that you call your children. So he says, "Ya bunayya, la taqsus ru'yaka ala ikhwatik, fayakidu laka kayda, inna ash-shaytana lil-insani aduwwun mubin." That, oh my beloved son, don't relate your vision, your dream to anyone, especially not to your brothers, fayakidu laka kayda, because they may plan against you. Inna ash-shaytana lil-insani aduwwun mubin. Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam, he cautioned, Yaqub alayhi salatu wassalam, he cautioned Yusuf alayhi salam and said that do not narrate your story, your dream to your brothers. And a lesson from here, every single word, an ayah, verse in this surah has a lesson to take from it. You can take over from this entire surah, which spans over approximately half a juz. Every single verse, you will be able to take and draw a lesson from it. You can take over 100 lessons just from this entire surah itself. We have just started with 2. This is going on to the 3rd one. We haven't even passed the first side still. And the first 2-3 verses we haven't passed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions down here, Yaqub alayhi salam mentions to Yusuf alayhi salam and says, don't mention your vision to anyone. And this is important for us as human beings. When you have a good dream, we feel a bit excited and we wish to narrate it to someone. And we wish to tell someone about a good dream. Remember one thing, al-aynu haqqun, that the evil eye is a reality. It is true. Jealousy is also true. Yes, you may feel someone who is your close companion, you can confide in them, you can tell them that, I've had this particular dream. Someone who you trust for many, many years, you can confide in them. But generally narrating your dreams to anyone is nothing big other than what will come as a reality of that dream. Mentioning to anyone has no benefit to your own particular life. And this is the lesson that we draw from here, that when we have a bad dream, we don't narrate it to anyone. But here as well, he is having a good dream because the reality of this dream comes 40 years later. The reality of this dream comes 40 years later, where you will see later on in the end of the surah, and we will continue this throughout Taraweeh today as well, that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, this dream comes to fruition. But his father tells him that do not narrate it to your brothers. Anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his brothers in reality were jealous of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam because his father had loved him very dearly. And they planned to get rid of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So this was their plan, that they had plotted to get rid of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So what they did is, whenever they would take their goats for grazing out in the lands, they told their father Yusuf alayhi salam, Yaqub alayhi salam, that just let Yusuf alayhi salam accompany us. Just let him accompany us, and we wish to just take him out. But out of this jealousy and out of this fatherly love, Yaqub alayhi salatu was salam refused, and he said, no, I'm not going to let my son go anywhere close to you. Now, as a father, as a parent, you will always know the qualities of your own child. And you sometimes will automatically hold dear to yourself. Out of many of the children, you may hold one dear, or you may hold a few dear. However, to be neglectful to every single one of them is not from parenthood. Yes, who you hold dear to your heart, you do not mention it. You show them the love, that is normal, it is natural. However, you do not neglect the remainder sons or the remainder daughters that you have. And that is natural. And also this is one other lesson for us, for the youngsters here, that sometimes parents have this inclination towards a certain child due to their certain qualities, due to their characteristics, due to the way that they act. Remember one thing, O youth, and those whose parents are still alive, those whose parents have passed on, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them the highest stages in Jannatul Firdaus. Those whose parents are still alive, remember there are two ways of becoming and receiving dua from your parents. One is, you generally ask your parents to make dua for you. When you generally ask your parents to make dua for you, you are in need of a particular dua. But the most closest way of serving your parents and interacting with your parents and being dutiful to your parents is when you do their service and the dua that comes out from their mouth, that is a very, very important dua. You take a glass of water for your mother, for your father, you present it to them. The dua that comes out from them, that dua Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not reject. So there's two ways of being dutiful. One is you tell your parents to make dua for you, yet you don't do anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also accept that dua. But remember, your parents will always remember those occasions when you were dutiful to them. This child had bought me a glass of water. This child, your father, your mother has come from a long day of work. You sit down with your mother and you say, Mother, you wish to press her feet. Many of you may see this as, something very disgusting. Jannah lies beneath the feet of your mothers. If your mother is still alive, you have the opportunity to serve her. This is the ways of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam was born an orphan. However, when he went to the grave of his mother, Amina radiallahu anha, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam only broke down. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam only broke down. And it's important for us that we have our parents alive. Anyway, moving on from there, they plotted to get rid of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So what they did is one day, when Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam had reached an age of puberty, the brothers then insisted to their father and told him that, look, Yusuf alayhi salam is now old enough, let him accompany us. So with this kind of reluctance, Yusuf alayhi salatu Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, he allowed them and he told them that, look, you can now take Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. As soon as the brothers departed from their home, and they came and they were far enough, they decided to plan and plot or dispose of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So what happened was, they came across a dry well, and in that well they removed the shirt of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam and they threw Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam in that well. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam pleaded and told them, but obviously these people with no heart, the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, they left Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam and they just threw him inside the well. Anyway, on the way back, they came back, they slaughtered a goat, and what they did is they stained the shirt of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam with the blood of that goat. Look at this evil plot that they had decided. When they arrived back to their father, they came back in a weeping manner. Some of the scholars in Mufassirun, they write, and I'll just end off on this. Sometimes, when a child comes crying to you, always try and understand the situation. It may not be at first instance that child may be innocent. Sometimes a child comes from madrasa and he comes back crying and he says, my teacher has said this. Investigate the situation. The scholars say from this, there's a lesson to learn. But sometimes you need to understand your children. You need to look at them, and sometimes what they did is they came back in a crying manner, and I'll end off on this. They came back in a crying manner and they told their father that, look, whilst we were grazing, a wolf had come and ate Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam did not believe this story and he remained patient. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ, that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam had beautiful patience. And what is beautiful patience? Inshallah, we will mention before Salatul Taraweeh. We'll go into a little bit more detail and we'll mention what is beautiful patience mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how in difficult times we can uphold this beautiful patience as believers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us success in this world and hereafter. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin. Yeah, bismillah. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallahu khairan. Allahu Akbar.
We can get the link and you can send it to the whole group.